In these uncertain economic times, it's easy to be worried about protecting your wealth, your hard-earned savings, and your family's financial future. Plunging interest rates, the devaluating dollar, and political unrest constantly threaten what you have worked hard to earn and all that you own. That's why now it's more important than ever to protect your assets and have the money you need to make your dreams come true. Welcome to the Global Wealth Fortress Report with successful global entrepreneur and wealth preservation expert Joel Nagel. Joel's helped thousands of people just like you protect what you have so that you can make even more and make your every dream come true. So, sit back and enjoy Joel Nagel's offshore expert advice on how you can live the good life at a great price, where the sun never sets on your financial fortress.
Hello. This is Carib Carter-Clues, and welcome to Joel Nagel's Global Wealth Fortress Report. And today we have a very, very important topic that I know is on everyone's mind because it kind of preys upon you because the IRS is involved. What about paying taxes when you make your move offshore? Well, let's ask the expert. Joel, what about the IRS and taxes and the nightmare of all that when you make your move offshore? Is there any hope? Is there any surcease, redemption?
Well, Carter, it's good to be with you. As I mentioned before we went on, today is Independence Day in Belize, and there's a massive parade going on right outside my window. So maybe that's good to have a little background noise, but at least it'll put us in a festive mood to talk about taxes. And of course, we're right at the end of the extension periods for taxes. We have September 30th coming up for structures. We have October 15th for individuals for 2021. We're still talking about 2021 taxes, right? And lots of my clients are still, rushing around at the last minute. This is a serious topic, right? And there are some silver linings that, a lot of your viewers will like, and we'll delve into those. But I want to start by saying this is a serious issue. And, the notion that, and I still hear it today, not as much as I did 20 or 30 years ago, but people saying things like, well, I'm offshore. Who's going to know? How can they tell? How can they find out? Like, anybody tells you that kind of stuff, run for the hills, honestly. I mean, we live in a very, very transparent world, bank transactions. I had a IRS agent tell me one time that when you go into a bank and you send money, let's say from your bank in Pennsylvania or wherever, let's say to Panama or Belize or anywhere, that the bank, as part of their function, when they send that wire, that in real time, meaning the exact second that they send the wire on your behalf, a report is sent to the IRS. Now, the Treasury Department, the IRS, they get millions and millions of those reports because it's every single day, right? But now the sophistication of the supercomputers, they sift through all that, and believe me. So what that really means is the IRS knows about your transfer before you've even left the bank. That's how quickly they know about it. So you want to make sure you're reporting, disclosing, filing, and last but not least, we've just with the new stimulus bill where we're hiring some 75 to 80,000 new IRS agents. We have this army. It's one of the largest federal agencies that exists, and it's going to be policing even more. So the bottom line, the takeaway is you have to do it right. You have to do what is legal. Now, having said that, you have no obligation to do more than what's legal. And if you go back 100 years, there was this great judge. His name was Judge Learned Hand. That was really his true name, Learned Hand.
Good name for a judge. Yes.
The constitutional amendment had just gone through, that created the tax code, because under the original Constitution, going back, 250 years, there was no direct taxation of the people permitted by the federal government. A lot of people don't realize that. For the first 150 years of our country, there was no federal income tax. The states could tax you. There were sales taxes. The government could have import duties and things like that, but there was no direct taxation. So, we get to, World War I, the government's really strapped for money, and they push through constitutional amendment. If you look at the debates, they were talking about, well, what should the tax rate be? Because again, the federal government wasn't supposed to tax you at all. And they wanted to put a limitation in the amendment that the federal government couldn't tax you more than 10%. And people just laughed. They're like, there's no way, there's no Congress ever that would tax the people by an amount greater than 10%. We don't even have to put that in there. The first taxation went up to a maximum of about 4%.
That's right.
Exempted, 75% of the people. So now, of course, we've come a long way. I have clients 40, 50, almost 60% tax. If you're self-employed, I have a doctor in Beverly Hills. He's self-employed. He's paying self-employment tax, Medicare, state of California tax, city of Beverly Hills tax, federal tax. On top of that, he's paying 60% tax.
60%. 60%. Joel, the average American today spends more paying their taxes than they do on food, housing, and healthcare combined. That's where we are now.
Yeah. And of course, a lot of people still don't see it because they're employees, so it comes out of their paycheck. But people who are self-employed definitely see it and feel it when you have to stroke that check directly to the IRS, every month or every quarter, however often you have to make your estimated payments. But so let's come to your specific question. You're asking about, well, what about if you live abroad?
Yes.
Well, the bad news is the U.S. is the second government in world history to claim the ability to tax its citizens on their worldwide income, regardless of where they live. The first was the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire, 2,500 years ago, pay unto Caesar what's due unto Caesar. And it didn't matter where you lived. The notion was you were a Roman citizen, you had the benefits, you had the protections of Rome. No other, government in history has ever tried to do that until the U.S. government, which started again in 100 years ago. But that snowball has gotten bigger and bigger and bigger to where, there's disclosures by foreign banks. There's no way that you're going to avoid it or hide from it, right? So you start from the proposition that pay under Caesar what's due under Caesar. And that means in the U.S., if you're American, you got to pay U.S. tax. Now, there's a couple ways that you can mitigate that tax. One of which is there are tax treaties between the United States and other countries. So if you live, let's say, in Germany and you pay taxes to Germany, you can take the taxes that you pay in Germany to offset your taxes in the U.S. So, Germany in some cases has an even higher tax rate. France has a higher tax rate. Italy has a higher tax rate. So, Canada, higher tax rate. So if you live in some of those developed countries, you may be paying so much tax that you actually owe no U.S. tax. Now, that doesn't mean you don't have to file. You still have to file, and then you take a foreign tax credit of what you paid to the foreign government, and it reduces your U.S. amount. So I have, for example, some people, they're against the government, they're against the military, they're against the environmental policies, whatever they're against. One way to legally pay no tax in the U.S., move to another country that has higher taxes. Now, that's not my preferred solution, right? Because I don't really think that that's a good way to get out of paying taxes by paying more taxes.
Right. I like that.
There is another way. In addition to the foreign tax credit of taxes paid, there's something called the Foreign Earned Income Exclusion, FEIE for short. And the Foreign Earned Income
FEIE. Let's repeat that because I want to make sure people understand it because it's complex, but I think it's very important. Foreign Earned Income Tax Exclusion.
Right.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
It's important that we break down all those words because when people come to me and they're like, "Well, can I take it for this? Can I take it for that?" I'm like, Okay, let's go back to the word foreign earned income exclusion. Foreign. It's got to be foreign. You have to be outside the US. You have to be foreign. The income itself, believe it or not, does not have to be foreign. So if you have an employer or somebody who's willing to pay you from inside the US and you live outside the US, you can pass the hurdle of that first word, foreign. All right.
Okay.
So that's good news.
All right.
And in this
All
day
right.
and age where people can, people can work virtually, they can, log into their computer just like we are now. You're in the States, I'm in Belize. If I was getting paid to do this podcast, then I would meet the definition of foreign, right? Because I'm sitting here. I'm not in the US, right?
Okay.
That's foreign. The next one's earned. Well, what does earn mean? Earn means, hey, you're rolling up your sleeves, you're going to work, you're doing something. It doesn't matter what that something is. You could be an oil worker, you could be an attorney, you could be a sous chef. It doesn't matter. You have to be working, okay? As opposed to an investor, right? I get people that say, well, I have, $10 million invested in, this, that, or the other. Will this qualify? No, it doesn't qualify because it's not earned. Well, what about a pension? No, it doesn't qualify because it's not earned. What about Social Security? No, it doesn't qualify because it's not earned, right? So you have to make the money. You can't be getting it as a passive investor, right?
Not Social Security.
No.
Nuts.
Yeah. So you don't get any improvement from, a lot of people pay little or no taxes if that's their sole income. You would get a foreign tax credit if you paid any tax at all, but most countries exempt, retirement and pension income from foreign sources. Okay. So, like if you lived here in Belize, for example, where I am, you would not pay any Belize tax on your U.S. Social Security. Whether you paid U.S. tax will depend on how much you make and how much other assets you have and blah, blah, blah. So anyways, foreign, you got to be outside the country. Earned, you got to roll up your sleeves and do it. And, income, it has to be income to you. It can't be income to a company. It can't be income to your friend. It's income to you that you're reporting on your tax return. So, and then tax, meaning you calculate the whole tax, right? I made X number of dollars. I was abroad. I earned it abroad. Here's the tax rate based on that income. Here's the amount I owe, right? Here's the tax, that word. And then the last word, exclusion. So the tax code excludes income and tax due on that income right now up to about the first $110,000. Okay. Now, if you are, an oil worker making $110,000, you're very happy. You work in Nigeria, they're not paying you, and you're not paying any taxes there. You're not paying any taxes in the U.S. And so imagine that you would be making maybe 25, 30, 35% more bottom line because you don't have to pay tax. You have this exclusion amount. Now, if you're very wealthy and you earn, $10 million, that exclusion amount, that it's the same. So, so what happens is you calculate the tax, I owe X amount, then you have the exclusion on that 110. So it's like a minus, right? You calculated, hey, I made 110 or I made 80 or I made 30 million. It doesn't matter. In every single case, the amount you subtract is this $110,000 exclusion. If that brings you down to zero, then you owe no tax. By the way, that's per person. So if you're a married couple filing jointly, you get that twice.
Question is, can I get the foreign earned income? Let me get it right. Foreign earned income exclusion if I'm an individual, or do I have to be a business? Like Carter Clues working remotely in Honduras. Can I get it, or do I have to be Carter Clues Incorporated working remotely in Honduras? Business or person?
It's a great question. The exclusion amount is to the person, but there's definitely reasons why setting up a company makes sense. Okay. Let's say you're getting a payment from a US company. You might say, okay, I'm an independent contractor, or, I'm providing a service. I want that money to come to my own company, and then I want my own company to pay me. Okay. You'll still get the exclusion at the individual level. You'd also get the deduction at the corporate level because your salary is an expense. So You know,
Very
guess
good.
what? I have clients who, they just happen to make $110,000 working for their company. Their wife makes $110,000. Their son makes $110,000. Their daughter makes $110,000. I mean, you can be creative as long as people are really there doing it, and they really meet all of the other criteria. If they're sitting up in, Pittsburgh or Cleveland and, holding down a job doing something else, don't try to apply for and take the foreign earned income exclusion, because, you get audited really fast. And again, the government a few times has tried to shut the foreign earned income exclusion down, but there's a big pushback, particularly because there are strategic industries. The oil industry is probably number one, where you have large volumes of people working all around the world. And for them to have to calculate, and there's already a huge inconvenience. They have to travel, be away from their families. And the idea of the foreign earned income exclusion, it's like a benefit for those people who really live and work abroad.
It's fantastic. It's fascinating. It's fantastic. And it's, as we said at the beginning, it's vitally important. Let me ask you this now. Is there any time limit on how long I have to live offshore? Let's say Carter goes to Honduras and works 3 months. And I say I made my 110,000 in that 3 months, and I come back home the other 9 months and I don't even work because I made 100,000 in 3 months in Honduras. Do I get my exclusion?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I'm really glad you asked that. The unfortunate answer is no, and because you do have to be. And look, you can imagine a lot of scenarios like that. What if you're a rock star and you go abroad and perform a concert and make $10 million?
Yeah.
No. The fact that you meet all those criteria is irrelevant, because part of the test is there's several tests that you can qualify from a time perspective. One is that you are a bona fide resident of another country. Now, the U.S. doesn't necessarily dictate what that is. And maybe Honduras says, hey, 3 months is all you need to be here to be a resident. And I have, Belize, you only have to be here a month to be a resident. And in Portugal, you only have to be there a week to be a resident. So, then the U.S. says, okay, that's fine. But even in that scenario, you have to be outside the country more than inside the country. So you're looking at least 183 days. And then if you're not a resident of another country, there's a safe harbor, like going back to the Nigerian oil worker, right? They're flying in, working,
Right,
flying out,
right.
blah, blah, blah. But for those guys, unfortunately, the litmus test is much higher. They have to be outside the U.S. They can only be in the U.S. 30 days a year. So that's where we pick up people like, like I have a client, he's a captain in the Merchant Marines. He's basically on the high seas all the time. When he's not on the high seas, he could be in a port anywhere. And he just monitors to make sure that he's not in the U.S. more than 30 days because he's not a resident anywhere else. But if you were a bona fide resident in Honduras, you could live 183 days in Honduras, 182 days in the U.S., and you could qualify. So,
Okay.
the rules can kind of be a little convoluted, but they are also black and white. There's no gray area. So you just, figure out the path that works for you. That's what we help clients do. We ask them a lot of questions. Tell us about your business, your lifestyle. I have clients that, for example, they live abroad, their kids go to school abroad, so that during the school year, they're outside the country, but they maybe want to come back in the summer. Well, thank you for putting up my.
Oh yeah, vital. It's vital, Joel.
But
It's vital.
yeah, so we try to make sure that we can stake out what that path is, and then we give the client the rules and say, okay, if you're on this path, this is what you can do, this is what you can't do.
Excellent. And I want to point out, one of the reasons I held that up is at that website, one of the tabs on the top is called Knowledge Center. And everything I've been talking to you about, I read on the Knowledge Center. You have a great article there, Joel. Great article that goes into what you have really spelled out for us. And so, folks, I encourage you, go to the site, review what Joel has just said, and then if you have questions, you've got to call. Because as you said at the beginning, this is really too important to play any games with.
Yeah, exactly.
They are on you like ugly on an ape now. You can't escape. There's nothing you can do.
And we really like it when a client or potential client calls and they have gone through the knowledge center, because it's answered a lot of their questions already, but
Yeah.
it can fine tune down to the one or two or three things that they don't answer. So it's educating them, and the conversation starts at a much higher level. We can be much more productive. We can go a lot deeper in a short period of time. So thank you for that. We're actually working right now to update that and put a lot of new articles in there. But yes,
It's excellent.
It's
an excellent resource. And also, I should add that you are absolutely incredible at explaining this, because even I can understand what you're saying. And anytime anybody mentions anything to do with numbers, my mind shifts into neutral. But so
well,
you're
thank you for that. In
you're
fact,
exceptional.
that's my favorite compliment, honestly. When I'm at conferences, when a little old lady comes up to me and says, "Thank you, you've explained something to me that I didn't understand for the last 5 or 10 or 30 years. And I've met with my own accountant, I've met with my own CPA," and they go blah 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 blah.
Yeah,
And
no way.
So, I'm a big fan of Warren Buffett. You boil everything down to the easiest common denominator, and if you can't explain it, you can't really understand it. And sometimes when I'm talking to some advisors in other areas, and they're giving me this big, long, convoluted conversation, and they're like, "Are you with me?" It's kind of like the emperor's new clothes. And I'm like, "Oh, no, I'm not with you. I don't understand anything. Start over, explain it again, make it simple. Give me the elevator version. Give me the 10-year-old version." I want to start at the lowest level and then work up from there. So hopefully with the foreign earned income, again, taking that phrase, foreign earned income exclusion, breaking it down and say, okay, let's analyze every word, then you understand it without too much trouble.
Excellent. We're almost out of time, but I want to take a few minutes, because we're closing in on what I think is the most important financial event of the year, and that is there we go, folks, the President's Week 26 coming up in November. We talked about it a little last. Matter of fact, we devoted a show to it. This is an incredible conference. Let's first give them the overview of what it is, and then any updates you can give us since last time we talked about it.
Well, thank you for that. It's sort of like, me calling upon my A team to get together once a year. A lot of investment conferences, you have great people with great ideas. And what we try to do is look at it, think of it as like a sports competition, right? Investing is the offense, asset protection is the defense, and you need to have a good mix of both if you want to win the game. So you'll find at my conference, you'll have tax experts, accountants, CPAs, insurance, people you might not necessarily think of at a normal investment conference, and then alternative investments, real estate, crypto. We try to give a very well-rounded, and again, it's the people that I use. When I have a crypto question, who do I call? I call somebody like Erica Gemma. She's just like you said about me. She explains everything in the crypto world really, really well. If I have a tax issue, I call somebody like Christopher Braun. He's one of the most gifted tax lawyers in the entire country. So I bring all these people together for 4 days. It's, we talk about everything from politics to religion, all the things you're not supposed to talk about, investment, asset protection, estate planning. And it's unique in the sense that, we bring everybody together, and, we have breakfast, lunch, and dinner, cocktail parties, keynote speakers. We're all together the whole time. And the idea is that, if you have questions, you can ask people. If you want to hear something from 4 different aspects or perspectives, you can do that. And at the end of the conference, we have a session called "Where Do We Go From Here?" It's my absolute favorite time. The speakers, the attendees, we're all sitting in a giant, like King Arthur's Knights of the Round Table. And, I usually kick it off by asking a question or two, and then it takes over itself. It has a life of its own, and people are really asking, sharing. I've had speakers tell me, like, I learned way more. My role here was really more of an attendee than a speaker. I've had attendees who had some, very interesting nugget of information that they shared with us, that they became the speakers of the educator. So we do this once a year. It's a lot of work to pull it off. We get truly great speakers.
Experts,
And,
experts.
they're people that I've known many years. Otherwise, I wouldn't invite them to come. And we're not quite ready to announce our keynote, but it's going to be really good this year. So maybe next week, ask me again, and we'll talk about the keynote.
Well, yeah, I will. I know it's going to be a great one. Last year, I think it was Ron Paul, right?
Yeah, Ron Paul was fantastic, and
incredible.
He not only gave a speech, he did a fireside chat that went on one evening, 3 hours, and people were just mesmerized. And then he dutifully shook hands and did a photo op with all the people. He had his books, he signed and autographed all his books. He was supposed to come for like 3 hours. He stayed for 2 days. I mean, he really enjoyed it. And he sat, through a number of the presentations and thanked the speakers and said he felt like he got a lot out of it personally. So, that's what we want. We want to make a really valuable program for whoever's sitting in the room. And, if some of your, audience, it's not for everyone. It's not inexpensive.
No.
But it's for people that really care deeply about their wealth, protecting it. Generational wealth stewardship is a huge part of it. We have one of the top groups that helps create family offices coming this year. They help you create your own family office so that you can, steward your wealth in a very professional way from one generation to the next. We have some people that deal with philanthropy at a very high level that can, create tax efficient structures so that you can give away, your money when you want and get the maximum tax deduction. That's really important too, right? Because, I got off track before. Judge Learned Hand, his comment was one of the first cases that went up the appellate court, the government was saying, hey, this person did this, and this, and they did it to pay less tax, right? That was the government's argument. Like, hey, we don't see why this person did this. They pretty much did it to save tax. And Judge Learned Hand said, but taxes are not voluntary payments the way they're positioned under the tax code. Right. They are what he referred to as forced extractions, right? You don't pay your taxes. Somebody shows up with a gun and a badge and hauls you off and you end up in an orange jumpsuit. So it's not voluntary. You don't get to decide whether you want to pay taxes or not. But he went on to say, so each person, given that they are forced extractions, has the right to structure their affairs legally to pay the least amount of tax possible.
Good.
And that's what we're really shooting for, whether it's in a one-on-one conference. Certainly at President's Week, you hear a lot of discussion about how to minimize your tax legally through things like the foreign income exclusion, through insurance products, how to leverage your IRA. I mean, there's a million techniques. And, if one of those techniques works for you or somebody that attends, it'll pay for itself, 100 times over in terms of the time and money it takes to go to the event. But I love the event. I make sure I get to know all the people, on a first name basis. They're sending me Christmas cards and things like that. I mean, really try to maintain personal relationships with the people who go there. And I think the other speakers and attendees feel the same way.
And I want to emphasize something you just said. Two things. One is that the people don't just come and speak and leave. They have lunch and dinner and breakfast with you. There's interaction, which you rarely get at other conferences. The other is, I have to say it is exclusive. And I think you only take about, around 50 people, right?
Yeah, we max out. I mean, depending on the venue, it's in Vegas this year. We'll try our best, to put another chair at the table. But yeah, you get to the point where you max out and you have to cut it off. And that's why I'm glad we're talking about it in September.
Yeah.
People are going to be calling me, particularly after they hear about the keynote speaker. They're going to be calling me right up until the week before in November and saying, hey, we really want to come. And we're going to say, sorry, you can't come. And then they're going to say, are you going to live stream it? Which we did the last 2 years because of COVID. And we're going to say, no, why is that? Well, some of our speakers, they don't really want to speak on the record. They don't want to speak into a scenario where their words can be manipulated, edited, things like that. And we find that the give and take is much, much better when there's not, cameras running and people can just speak their minds and whatever that is. You might not agree with everything that somebody says, but just because you disagree doesn't make them a disagreeable person. We want frank conversation. We want to hear the inner feelings of our speakers and our attendees. So yeah, we're excited. It'll be a great event, and it will sell
There
out.
again. There we go.
I'm not saying that as a sales hype. I'm absolutely 1,000% positive it'll sell out. So if anybody's interested, let me know. It's by invitation only, so you have to request an invitation. You have to be an accredited investor to get an invitation. But beyond that, we look forward to seeing you and a number of the Offshore Club folks there.
It's fantastic. Joel, thank you very much. This has been terrific. Every aspect of it, your explanation, letting us know about the conference. Thank you, sir. Have a good time at Belize Independence Day. Go out and celebrate.
Well, you can see I'm a little more casual than I normally am, and I do have some people waiting for us. There's a whole series of events. They actually started last night at midnight. At midnight the night before is the big fireworks, and here in San Pedro there's a lot going on with boat parades and children parades, and it's a very, very festive thing, and it's nice to see. I mean, it's a small village, and the people are excited to celebrate their past, their present, and their future, and it's a much simpler life here than a lot of other places. Are we good?
Definitely not. I mean, I have literally no way to cut that. He's got to come back. I don't know what he did. Start poking.
Maybe you have to splice one of his other, concluding remarks from another show. Here he is. He can do it, and then you can hopefully splice out the dead time.
Knocked off right at the end there. So I assume you kept talking, so we'll just come back to me single screen, Gary. Does that sound good?
No, because I need you to follow up with what he said, because it was two screens. Otherwise, it's going to be him talking with the black screen there, and then you. All you got to do is fake it. If you didn't hear what he said, say something like, "Yeah, thanks for that, and we look forward to seeing you again." And then I'll go to single screen. I don't know. I'll fix it.
All right. I can see. Okay. I can do that. All right. Thank you, Joel. Terrific. Absolutely. Thank you for joining us again.
Great being with you, Carter. Thank you.
Have a great time. Have a great time, folks. Very, very important program today. Very, very important for two reasons. One is contact Joel at Nagel Law. I'm going to put it up for you again because I want you to write it down. I want you to write it down. Get all the information you need so when you make your move offshore, you can have all the tax benefits that you deserve. The other, I want you to attend. I'm going to be here. I'm going to be at this event. Okay? I'm going to be at this event. If you have any questions about how to make sure that you can come to, just write to me, caribcarter7@gmail.com, my email address, and I'll make sure we're there together. All right? So as I tell you every week, thanks for joining us. Let's do this thing.